Good evening, everyone. I'm Ankit, and you're watching the Indian Express analysis, which goes live every day at 4 p.m. on StudyIQ IAS English channel. Today is 16th of April, and we are going to discuss important articles that have appeared in the today's newspaper. We'll start off naturally by the biggest news of the day by highlighting that IMD, that is Indian Meteorological Department, it has predicted above normal monsoons in India this year. So, what is the criteria based on which it can say above normal or below normal or just normal monsoon? All of that we'll understand, in addition to understanding few details about the organization itself, that is the Indian Meteorological Department. Now these kind of predictions are very important for our geography, because we understand India is a tropical country and naturally its climate, its society, its economy, all of this is entirely dependent on rainfall. So the levels of rainfall, something is very essential for India. Therefore it is also very important from our exams perspective, and you'll see that in the today's discussion I'll let you know that even the previous year questions in prelims have been asked related to the same kind of development that are covered in our today's article. So it is a very important development relevant from geography perspective. That is why I've highlighted the relevant paper, GS paper 1. Similarly, in the second article, we'll be understanding the levels of retail inflation, because if you look at the newspaper today, it has said that the retail levels or retail inflation level in India has come down to a 67-month low. So the levels of retail inflation in India is nearly the lowest in its last 5 to 5.5 years. So we'll try to understand how do you calculate retail inflation, what are the major components that are used to calculate retail inflation, and why it is important for us to keep the levels of retail inflation below a certain level. So all of this we will cover today. Now good afternoon everyone, good evening Soham, Shweta, Blueberry, good evening, Augustine, good evening. Now Soham is asking a question. Today there is a news about data released by the government relating inflation under control. Yes, this is the second article itself that I am going to cover. My question is, how valid or how true is the data measured by the government is, and how do you calculate it? I will tell you everything, not to worry, Soham. Okay, this is important from GS paper 3 perspective, as inflation levels in the economy is important from economy paper, right? Similarly, in the third article, we'll be understanding why is actually there is a surge or increase in the levels of gold loans that are available in Indian economy, and also why there is an increase in corresponding levels of non-performing assets. We'll try to understand the first of all definition of non-performing assets, and also we'll try to understand what are the factors that drive beyond surge or increase in gold loans in our country, right? Now you understand gold is something very precious in India, not just from economy perspective but from cultural perspective also, as gold is a symbol of prosperity in many cultures irrespective of the area in our country, right? And also people who have large amount of gold, they go to bank and take loans as against keeping those gold as collateral, right? So this is a good thing to do, but beyond a certain level, this surge can also be harmful for our economy. So we'll try to understand this in our today's discussion. This again is relevant from GS paper 3 perspective. In the fourth article, we'll be understanding about an atmospheric phenomena known as atmospheric river. Is atmospheric river literally a river, or is it something else? I'll tell you, not to worry, right? Now this again is related to geography. So the relevant paper is paper 1. This is related to hydrology. In the fifth article, we'll be understanding about a folk dance of state of Assam, that is Bihu. Because yesterday, as the Assamese New Year, in addition to many New Years that happened across the country, Bihu dance were quite prominent in the state of Assam, and it also appeared in the newspaper. So we'll try to understand few details about this particular folk dance, in addition to understanding different folk dances that are relevant from our UPSC's perspective. And also this is a very important topic for prelims, because questions have appeared not on Bihu but on similar other folk dances that have happened elsewhere. So similarly, you can ask or expect a question on Bihu this year, right? And in the end, we'll be understanding about India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, as this proposal by India, which also includes countries from Middle East and Europe, has been forwarded by India and Italy, and we'll try to understand each and every detail about this development. This again is relevant from GS paper 2 perspective, and mostly also GS paper 3, because it is an economic corridor. Whereas fifth article is again important from GS paper 1, particularly from art and culture perspective. And you understand the weightage of art and culture as prelims is quite high. So you can't ignore such topics when they come in the newspaper, right? Good evening, Reshma. Good evening, Baga. Yes. Now the notes for the session, as usual, I tell you every day, this will be available on my Telegram channel. The Telegram channel is called as ATS Live. So please make sure to subscribe to this channel and do not forget to download the notes which I upload immediately after the class ends, because downloading the notes is not just enough. You have to go through the notes immediately after the class end, and what you have to do is that those notes is around 50 slides every day, okay, on an average. But what you have to do is keep a separate copy and jot down important details of those notes in your one-page sheet only. So technically you should have 1 page of notes for every day session, which means 25-26 pages of notes for every month, and revising 25-26 pages worth of notes is just a few hours of hard work which you can do, and it will help you immensely when it comes to prelims and mains examination. So please mark my words and follow this routine diligently if you want to get selected or not, right? This is the only solution on how to how to approach current affairs, right? No need to do anything else. Okay, hope I've made everything clear. Now we'll start off our today's discussion with this first article. This appeared on the very front page of the Indian Express newspaper, and you understand this particular news article is very important, not just for our India's economy but also for our exams perspective. Why? I will let you know. Now the relevant paper is GS paper 1, as it deals with monsoon, which is a geographical phenomena, right? Now let us understand the context of this article. According to this article, the country, that is India, is all set to have another good year of monsoon rains, as the Indian Meteorological Department, which is the apex authority responsible for forecasting the monsoon in India from the government side, is forecasting an above normal rainfall. So what makes a rainfall above normal rainfall or below normal rainfall? We'll try to understand this in our today's discussion. And also, this was the first long range forecast of the season by IMD, and it has said in this forecast that all main drivers of Indian monsoon, be it El Nino Southern Oscillation, be it the Indian Ocean Dipole, or be it the snow cover around the North Pole, all of these indicators were actually favorable in the terms of highlighting good monsoon season in India. So we'll understand how these drivers actually affect monsoon season in India and why has IMD categorized this year's monsoon as above normal monsoon. Okay. Now, this forecast, which was made in April, was the first forecast for the year. This will be followed by an updated forecast in the month of May, during which the IMD also shares its prediction of the 4 broad geographical regions, that how northern region, how eastern, how southern, how western regions of India will witness rainfall. It gives an all India average, it gives average of different regions also, and it also highlights the monthly distribution of rainfall, that what will be the rainfall levels in month of July, August, September and therein, right? Now this is also the time when, that is in the month of May, IMD also announces the likely date of onset of monsoon, and when monsoon arrives at the coast of Kerala, this is known as onset of monsoon season in India. Officially this date is June 1st, but it varies every year. Sometimes it can get delayed after June 1st, it can sometimes happen before June 1 also, right? So this actual date will be announced by IMD in its forecast in the month of May. So this is an important development from our news cycle perspective and also from our exams perspective. But before understanding the levels of rainfall, let us quickly ascertain the details about this Indian Meteorological Department. Now, why is Indian Meteorological Department important from exams perspective? Because you understand it was established in 1875, and what is current year? It is 2025. So this means 150 years has happened, and that is why this IMD is celebrating its 150th anniversary. And when such a milestone happens, you understand UPSC also has a tendency of asking such questions. Now this IMD is National Meteorological Service of the country, and it is the principal government agency in all matters relating to meteorology and allied subjects. So when it comes to rainfall, when it comes to drought, when it comes to floods, all of these predictions are made by which authority? By Indian Meteorological Organization. Now the headquarters of this body is located in New Delhi, and this headquarter is supported by 6 regional offices located in Mumbai, Chennai, New Delhi, Kolkata, Nagpur and Guwahati. And this body functions under the Ministry of Earth Sciences of the Union government, right? So these are the important facts that you have to remember. Also, let us understand what is the mandate or what is the responsibility of Indian Meteorological Department? Now first, it takes meteorological observations and provide current and forecasts meteorological information for weather sensitive activities, right? So amount of rainfall in the country, amount of snowfall in the hilly states, whether or not country will experience drought and in which regions the droughts will prevail, all of this is predicted by IMD, right? So it also warns against several or severe weather phenomena. So for example, if God forbid, if there will be an too much rainfall that will happen in the Himalayan states, so it actually premeditates this kind of a development and warns the authority that please be prepared. The amount of rainfall in the particular time period is expected to be quite high and it can actually lead to floods in your region. So that is why warning by IMD is very important in disaster management related activities. Also, it provides meteorological statistics which is required for nation building activities. For example, going forward, as you understand, global warming is happening. So the patterns of rainfall is expected to change. The amount of rainfall which is received throughout 4 months, going forward, there might be a case that this, which is widespread, availability of rainfall might not be so widespread, it can be localized, which can lead to flood related events, right? So this statistics which the meteorological department provides, it can be used by ministry to implement related policy measure, to prepare for disaster, to prepare for resilience of climate change, right? So this is why such statistics become important, and also conducts and promote research in meteorology and allied discipline. So this is the mandate of the Indian Meteorological Department, and this body is very essential when it comes to this year's prelims. Why? I told you 150th anniversary, or IMD is celebrating its 150th anniversary this year. So that is why such milestone becomes important. Now let's talk about the news. Now this news says that the IMD has reported that the monsoon season in India is likely to bring rainfall that will be 105% of the long period average. Now the average amount of rainfall that happens every year, IMD has calculated an average amount of rainfall for Indian monsoon, right? Now this average amount of rainfall for Indian monsoon currently stands at 87 centimeter every year. So if it estimates that this rainfall will be 105% of the average or long period average, this means 105% of what? Of 87 centimeter, which comes at this year's prediction. IMD has predicted 91 centimeter of rainfall. So this is how the long period average has been calculated, that the average amount of rainfall every year is calculated, then it is divided by the number of year, then we come at the average of 87 centimeter. Now it is predicting that it will be somewhat more than 87 centimeter. How much? 105% more, which stands at 91 centimeter. Understand this rainfall? Now, if it would have predicted or it would have given the information that this year rainfall will be 91 centimeter, but how would you know this 91 centimeter is more than average or less than average, right? So that is why in terms of communication, it is communicating that it will be this much amount more than average, so that common public understand. You need not give them the common details, because not everyone is going to appear in UPSC, only you are going to appear in UPSC. That is why I am telling you each and every detail. Understand? Now, this year, if the rainfall actually happens as per the prediction of IMD, this will be the 5th time in the last 7 years where the rainfall has become more than the average rainfall. So if it is more than average rainfall, this is called as a rain sufficient season, right? Now therefore, this will be the 5th year in the last 7 years which in India will receive more than 100% of the rainfall, and this will be the 2nd consecutive year of above normal rainfall. Last year it was 108% of long period average. Now it has predicted that it will be 105% of long period average, that means above normal rainfall. So what makes a rainfall above normal, below normal? This is the table that I have downloaded from IMD's website. It states that the normal levels of rainfall is when the rainfall is between 96 to 104% of long period average. If it is less than 96% of long period average, it is called as below normal rainfall, which is between 90 to 95% of long period average. And if it is even below that, then if it is below less than 90%, then it is called as deficient rainfall. Now opposite of normal rainfall, if it is more than 104% of long period average, it means the rainfall will be above normal rainfall. So when IMD has said that it will be 105% of long period average, which means this will be above rainfall. Similarly, if it is beyond 110%, then it means India will witness excess rainfall. So this is how the levels of rainfall has been categorized by which authority? By Indian Meteorological Department. Understand? You have any doubt in this? Well, IMD, ASI, banking are the Brits' best contribution to India. Well, not actually. Whatever institutions British set up, it was for their own benefits. It was not at all for Indian benefit. We actually adopted those institutions. We changed them according to our need. That is why India stands here right now without the British, right? We have surpassed the levels of growth of British economy, and going forward, we will surpass everybody, right? Understand? Now what happened in the banking sector during the Britishers, that there were small banks and they were lending only to the big companies. But what about small people? What about poor people? What about small industries? Who would lend them? So that is why RBI, after India got independent, changed all its policies so that the loans by the banks are provided to everyone, be it you, be it me, be it big company, be it small company. Okay. So please do not have a doubt that Britishers did something for India's best interest. They did it for their own colonial interest. Similarly with railways also. Now let's talk about the drivers of Indian monsoon. If you remember the first slide, the IMD has predicted that 3 drivers of Indian monsoon, that is El Nino Southern Oscillation, Indian Ocean Dipole, and the levels of snow cover in the northern hemisphere, or particularly in the Eurasian region. These are the drivers of Indian monsoon. Now what is El Nino Southern Oscillation? Now El Nino Southern Oscillation, it refers to the sea surface temperature. Sorry, let me change the color of the pen. It means the sea surface temperature that is prevailing in the Pacific Ocean, particularly in the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean, near the coast of Chile. Right. Now the levels of current that is prevailing in the coast of Chile, it actually determines the levels of El Nino Southern Oscillation. So suppose if the sea surface temperature in the eastern part of Pacific Ocean, which is located on the coast of South America, it is warmer than usual, then it means that El Nino will happen. Okay. And if it is the opposite, which means it is cooler than usual, then it would mean that La Nina going to happen, right? So this is how El Nino and La Nina is defined. If the temperatures of the water near the Chile coast, located in the eastern Pacific Ocean, just near the coast of South America, if it is warmer than usual, it means that El Nino conditions will prevail. And if it is cooler than usual, it means La Nina conditions will prevail. Now it has been widely assumed that due to El Nino, it leads to negative impact on Indian monsoon. So suppose if El Nino conditions prevail in Pacific Ocean, it will lead to less rainfall in India. Whereas if La Nina conditions prevail in Eastern Pacific Ocean, it will lead to positive development for Indian monsoons, which means Indian monsoon will be more than usual. So this is how monsoons, or this is how El Nino factor drives the Indian monsoon. Understand this? How El Nino or La Nina might affect Indian monsoon? This is quite clear. El Nino negatively impacts Indian monsoon, which means it will lead to less amount of monsoon in India. Similarly, La Nina will lead to higher amount of monsoon in India. Good evening, Saujanya. After a long I've seen you. Now another driver of the temperatures of another driver of the Indian monsoon is the Indian Ocean Dipole. What is Indian Ocean Dipole? Suppose this is the coast of India and the waters, you understand, is the Indian Ocean region, right? So Indian Ocean Dipole is the differences between temperatures in the Western Indian Ocean and the Eastern Indian Ocean. Now Western Indian Ocean is located near to the coast of Africa here. And Eastern Indian Ocean, there is this country Indonesia, right? So suppose this IOD becomes positive. What is positive IOD? Which means the temperature level here in the Western Indian Ocean is higher and the temperature levels in the Eastern Ocean region, Indian Ocean region, is lower. Then it is called as positive IOD. Similarly, when IOD becomes negative, what do you mean by negative IOD? That means temperature levels in the western part of the Indian Ocean region will be less as compared to temperature levels in the eastern part of the Indian Ocean. So this is called as negative IOD or negative Indian Ocean dipole. Now, due to positive Indian Ocean dipole, it leads to higher amount of rainfall in India, whereas if the Indian Ocean dipole is negative, it will lead to less amount of rainfall in India. Any doubts? So, IOD, it refers to the differences in the temperature in the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea side of the Indian Ocean. Quite precisely, it is the difference between temperatures that prevail in the Indian Ocean near to the coast of Africa and in the Indian Ocean near to the coast of Indonesia. So, if the temperatures near to the coast of Africa and the western part of Indian Ocean is higher as compared to temperatures in the eastern part of the Indian Ocean region, that is called as positive IOD. And this is good for Indian rainfall. Whereas the opposite, that is less amount of temperatures in the western part of the Indian Ocean and higher amount of temperatures in the eastern part of the Indian Ocean, that is called as negative IOD. And as the name suggests, negative IOD means less amount of rainfall in India. So, IOD is considered positive when Arabian Sea side is warmer than Bay of Bengal side, and this is generally favorable for Indian monsoon. Understand? Now, third factor is the presence of snow cover in the North Pole. Now, winter and spring snow cover over the northern hemisphere, including in the continents of Eurasia, when it is less than normal, this is actually a good sign for Indian monsoon, and it will mean that Indian monsoon levels will be higher than usual. Whereas if the opposite happens, if it is more than normal amount of snow cover in the northern hemisphere, specifically northern pole and Eurasia, it will lead to less amount of rainfall in India. So, Indian monsoon rainfalls, they are inversely related to the extent of snow cover in the particular North Pole region. Understand? So, these are the three indicators based on which we can assume how much amount of rainfall will happen in India. Now, let us understand why is rainfall so important for India. Why is actually these kind of routine announcements by IMDs covered in the first page of the newspaper, and why we are covering it in our today's discussion. So, let us understand the importance of rainfall. Now, almost 75% of India's annual rainfall, it happens in the 4 months of monsoon season, that is from June to September. So, the amount of water that we need for different purposes, be it irrigation for agriculture, be it for drinking water, be it for generation of power, and be it for general levels of economic development, this water or 75% of this water is provided to us by just 4 months of rainfall. So that is why this level of rainfall, or we need to understand how much amount of rainfall will be. For example, 55% of India's gross cropped area, this 55% of gross cropped area is rain fed. What do you mean by rain-fed areas? Which means irrigation is not present in this particular area. So, this is 55% of total gross cropped area in the country. So, when 55% of gross cropped area, these are supplied by water just by rainfall or not by irrigation. So, you understand good levels of rainfall is very essential. If the levels of rainfall will not be efficient or this sufficient, it will lead to reduction in the yield of crops. And when the reduction in yield of crops will happen, it will reduce the overall supply of food products or food grains or different crops in Indian market. And when there will be a less supply of food grains in the Indian market, you understand the levels of inflation will skyrocket. So, in order to control inflation, we need good yields of crops. And how do we ensure good yield of crops? By supplying them with water. And 55% of farms, these are irrigated by rainfall water only, because normal irrigation, tube well irrigation, canal irrigation, micro irrigation, all of this is not present. Similarly, what is the main economic activity in the rural area? This is agriculture. So, when most of the rural people, their livelihoods depend on agriculture, and if their agricultural levels are not good due to less amount of rainfall, how will rural economy grow, right? How will sale of two-wheelers increase? How will sale of tractors increase, right? So, these indicators, that is sale of two-wheelers like bikes, like scooties, and sale of tractors, these are indicators of rural economy, right? So, if rainfall is good, agricultural productivity will be high, suppose, and it will lead to growth in rural economy. And when rural economy is growing, it will automatically lead to higher amount of sale of two-wheelers and tractors. Similarly, a huge amount of power generation is very important And how do we generate power, especially by using water? That is hydroelectricity. So if the rainfall levels are not sufficient, how will our dams be having sufficient amount of water which will let it to grow and generate power? Similarly, water is used for drinking purposes also, and if the amount of rainfall is less, it will lead to scarcity of drinking water. And you understand this probably is the biggest consequences of how the rainfalls affect Indian economy, how it affects Indian society. Understand the implication? Now, let's see if you are able to solve this question. This is a previous year question of 2017. Good evening, Saujanya. Soma Mukherjee, good evening. Well, IOD is a phenomena characterized by the difference in sea surface temperature between tropical Western Indian Ocean, this is correct, and tropical Eastern Pacific Ocean, this is incorrect. I told you it is the temperature difference between Western and Eastern part of Indian Ocean only. So, first statement becomes incorrect. An IOD phenomena can influence El Nino's impact on monsoon, right? So, suppose if there is an El Nino condition in the Pacific Ocean, and how it will impact India's rainfall? It will negatively impact India's rainfall. However, if there is a positive IOD, this means that it will positively affect India's rainfall. So, India's rainfall will not reduce as much as because of El Nino, because other conditions are positive, right? So, this is how an IOD phenomena can actually exacerbate the conditions of El Nino, or it can actually compensate for El Nino also. Both ways it is correct. So, second statement is right. Therefore, the correct answer to this PYQ is option B. Only Soma has gotten this right. Sarang, Baga, Reshma. Please reread the question again after I upload the notes, okay? Now let us move with this next article. This article appeared on page 17, and I remember someone was asking in the comment section, how do we trust government's level of inflation, right? Well, inflation more than you, it is important for the government. You know why? Because if inflation levels is too high, people will get agitated and they will vote the government out. So, it is the primary responsibility of the government to control inflation. That is why, how will it control inflation? Only when it realizes what is the correct amount of inflation, right? So, it is more important for Prime Minister, it is more important for politicians to control the levels of inflation. That is why estimating inflation is very important, right? Now, this article appeared in the economy page, that is on page 17, and it is important from economy syllabus, right? Now, let us understand quickly the context of our today's discussion. Now, the article highlights that India's retail inflation levels, which means the levels assumed by consumer price index, it has slipped to more than 5 years low, that is 67 months low, as food prices have continued to moderate, creating room for deeper central bank rate cut amid fears of US-China trade war that may hit global growth. Now, if you remember our discussion few days back when RBI actually cut the repo rate, I told you one of the factors behind RBI cutting the repo rate was moderate or control in the levels of inflation. And this has been corroborated by this article which appeared, that it has said indeed the levels of inflation has fallen down to more than 5 years low. And the main driver for lower inflation in India has been cooling down of food prices. And why have food prices cooled down? Because last year also, as per the previous article discussion, I told you rainfall was good. So as rainfall was good, the amount of food grains that were produced in a country were high. Food grains did not damage due to lack of water, and hence the supply of food grains was sufficient. And as supply of food grains was sufficient, it led to cooling down of inflation. Now, that is why the levels of food inflation is controlled, and therefore it also reflects in the levels of retail inflation, which is CPI. How much does food inflation impact CPI? I will tell you, not to worry. Another factor that it says core inflation, which is a better gauge of domestic demand, has actually risen to 4.1% in March, up from 3.9 and 4% in the previous months. So what is core inflation? Can anyone let me know? Anyone? Can you let me know what is core inflation? Well, actually, this CPI or retail inflation, this is also called as headline inflation, okay? And this levels of inflation includes everything: inflation in food, inflation in fuel, inflation in clothing, inflation in your shoes, everything, right? So when you reduce or when you remove levels of food and fuel inflation from headline inflation, what you get is core inflation. So that is why do we reduce food and fuel inflation from headline inflation to come at core inflation? Because the prices of food and fuel, they fluctuate continuously, and that might not be a better indicator of the usual level of inflation. So that is why headline and core inflations are used to estimate the impact of food and fuel in the economy, right? Good, Baga Spinks. Now let us understand how do we actually calculate CPI. Now you understand, whenever you go to a market, you don't just buy food, right? You might require clothes, you might require specs, you might require watches, you might require books, right? So that is why you not just spend your entire money on food, but you require different things to sustain your life, right? So therefore, any inflation levels must also account for whatever people are buying usually in the market. Usually people buy food, but people also buy fuel to power their two-wheelers and four-wheelers. People also buy clothes for themselves, for their family members, right? People also go to restaurants and eat food. People also go to other cities and stay in hotels, right? So all of this is estimated when it comes to estimating the levels of inflation in the country. So when inflation is measured at the retail level, at the level when we go and buy items from market, usually that is called as consumer price index. But on the other hand, if the inflation levels were to gauge at wholesale level, that would have been called a wholesale price index. Now who calculates this inflation CPI? That is calculated by National Statistical Office of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and the base year of this calculation is 2012. What is a base year? Suppose, how will I know that, suppose if I go and buy this watch at 100 rupees, how will I know that actually the prices of watch has increased or not, right? So we need another year in comparison so that we can say the prices of watch have increased or the prices of watch has reduced. So for that purpose, we use a particular year as a base year and we compare the levels of inflation. So suppose if the prices of watch in the year 2012 was 80 and now in 2025 it has increased to rupees 120. So therefore we can say the prices of watch has increased, right? So that is how we need base year. Now this figure is released on 12th of every month. The coverage or what it includes, that it covers inflation levels in both urban and rural areas. It has a separate indices for CPI urban, CPI rural, and when we combine them both, we come at a CPI combined level, which is usually called as CPI. Now it also estimates the level of inflation in services. So yes, it covers services. It also includes indirect taxes in them. That is why it covers indirect tax, and it is actually targeted by RBI because it is statutorily mandated on RBI to keep the inflation levels at 4 plus minus 2%, which means it is the responsibility of RBI to keep the levels of inflation between 2% and 6% of CPI, right? So based on this inflation level only, that is CPI, RBI decides on to increase the repo rate or to reduce the repo rate to control inflation levels. Understand? Now let us see what is the weightage of different items used to calculate in CPI, right? Now as you know, you require food every day, okay? So that is why, suppose 100 rupees if you are spending every day, most of the money you will be spending on food because you require to eat food not just every day but 2 to 3 times every day. So that is why highest weightage in calculation of CPI is given to food and beverage. Similarly, some people might have the habit of chewing tobacco, might have habit of chewing candy, or might have a habit of smoking cigarettes. They also might spend some money on that purpose also. So for that, pan, tobacco, intoxicants, these are given the weightage of 2.38%. Why 2.38%? Because only few people do, not every person actually smokes or eats pan masala, right? Similarly, clothing and footwear, you understand, you do not buy clothing every day, you buy it maximum once a season or maybe once a year. So that is why 6.53% weightage is given on clothing and footwear. Also, people who are living in their home, they might have taken a loan from the bank, or people who might be living on rent, they need to pay rent every month. So that is why housing has a weightage of 10%. Similarly, other weightages are also decided. Fuel and light weightage miscellaneous weightage, which includes expenditures made on education, on healthcare, on transportation, on communication. How do you recharge your mobile, right? You recharge your mobile frequently. That is why all of this is also considered when considering the inflation, right? Now let's see if you have understood CPI or not. Please solve this question as soon as possible. Well, CPI is a measure of retail inflation that tracks prices change of a fixed basket of goods and services over time. This is correct. CPI is used by the RBI for inflation targeting under its monetary policy framework. Yes, this is correct. I have already told you this multiple times. And CPI is published monthly by the Ministry of Finance, and it includes separate indices for rural, urban and combined categories. Well, second part of the statement is correct. First one is incorrect. Why? Because it is published by NSO, which is a part of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So first and second are correct. Third is not. Therefore, option A, Sarang, Reshma, Mayank, Blueberry, Soham, Reshma, all of you are correct. Yes, option A is the right. Even you, Baga. Now I told you about consumer price index, right? But there are other estimates also, how we estimate the levels of inflation. These might be WPI, these might be producer price index. All of this I cover in great detail in my economy classes. Now, we have announced a new batch, that is an April morning batch, because you understand yesterday the April evening batches, the admissions for it has closed. Now we have opened the admission for a new batch which is going to start from this will start from 21st of April, and the prices for this batch is currently at 34,999. How to get admissions in this batch? Let me tell you this. Now first go to this StudyIQ website, create an account, click on explore courses. Now what I do, I teach in UPSC IS English batches, right? Now for UPSC IS English batches, click on this UPSC IS wala tile. The first tile will take you to April morning batch, which is going to start from 21st of April, and you can see the course fees right now is 41,999. But how to get discounts even on this amount? Let me tell you this. Now there might be a code which is flashing on the bottom half of your screen, right? That is called, use the code ATS Live to get maximum discount. So click on buy now and I'll tell you how to apply the code. There's an option here to add promo code. Click on add promo code. Here you have to enter coupon code, write ATS Live and click on apply. As soon as you click on apply, now see the value of course has reduced by discount of 7,000 rupees, and the diamond batch is available at 34,999. Similarly, discounts are available at platinum and gold also. But the maximum discount is available at diamond batches because all the features of StudyIQ IAS, be it Margdarshan, be it residential program, all of this is available in our diamond batches. And how to get admissions by applying discounts? You can use the code ATS Live to get discounts and save your and your parents' hard-earned money. Okay. Now let us move to another article. This article talks about surge in gold loans and also NPAs. And RBI has proposed some measures in order to control this surge and increase in NPAs in the gold loans, right? Now this actually appeared in yesterday's newspaper, but I've already told you that whenever we do not have sufficient time to cover all the relevant articles, I will cover it in subsequent days so that no important article is left out when you appear in prelims, right? So jaldi ka kaam gadbad ka, sometimes we have to ensure correct information goes and a timely information is going. Okay. Now RBI is drafting a new framework for gold loans in response to surge in both outstanding amount of gold loans and the amount of non-performing assets that has related to the gold loans. Now as per RBI data, the amount of loans that have been given under gold loan scheme have increased by 27.26%, and the amount of NPAs also relating to gold loans have increased by 28.58%. So these figures are not important. I have used these figures to demonstrate the extent of problem, right? You need not remember these figures, just remember the trend, okay? Now, first let us understand the very definition of non-performing asset. Whenever you take the loan and you fail to repay the principal amount or interest for as long as 90 days, then it is called as a non-performing asset. Because why? For banks, loan is an asset because they give you loans and they earn money out of it by your interest that you pay against those loans. So that is why for banks, these are assets. But when you're not paying the principal amount or interest, then those assets become non-performing. So that is the definition of non-performing asset. Also, there are different levels of classifications for NPAs also as per the RBI guidelines. First is called as substandard asset. For example, if the loan has remained an NPA for more than 1 month or more than 90 days up till 12 months, that is called as a substandard asset. But if it has remained NPA for even beyond 12 months, then it is called as a doubtful asset. Now, the loans, these are reflected in the balance sheets of the bank, that this much amount of loans we have given and this much amount of loans have not returned back, which means these have become NPA. But if it goes beyond a certain time period, then banks think that let us remove these non-performing assets from our balance sheet. However, we will continue to recover those money. So those are called as loss assets. So it is just a categorization. Loss assets does not mean that the banks will stop taking that money back from the customers. They do everything necessary, they just remove it from their balance sheet. So remember this, loss asset. Now, why are the reasons people are taking more gold loans as against the deposits they make in the gold? Now, first is the high gold prices. So whenever the prices of gold increase, naturally you are going to deposit that gold in the banks and take loans from the banks. So increase in prices of gold has encouraged people to pledge these gold as a collateral and take loans from the banks to meet their expenses like household needs, like education fees and medical bills. Similarly, there is a probability of rising indebtedness in the Indian household, because whenever economy is slowing down, it has impacted the amount of disposable income that people help, and whenever the amount of income that people have is less, it naturally means that the borrower's repayment capacity will reduce, right? So suppose if you are earning 1 lakh rupee every month, naturally your amount of repayment of a loan capacity would be quite high as against person who might be earning 50,000 every month, right? Now another factor is called as evergreening of loans. Now what people used to do before is that borrowers, they could repledge their jewelry by just paying on their interest, right? So suppose they were paying out the interest without paying the principal amount and say that, see, we are already giving you the interest, why do not you give us additional loans and we'll pay you interest also, right? So this allowed indefinite loan extensions without principal repayment. Now RBI has actually mandated that you can actually repledge your jewelry only after you pay back the principal amount as well as the interest amount. So just paying off the interest amount is not sufficient. You also have to pay the principal amount before you can repledge your jewelry. So these are the reasons why the amount of gold loans have increased, and also there is deficiency regarding to how RBI monitors this gold loan segment. Now, one ways in which how RBI regulates how much amount of money you can extend against gold collateral is loan to value ratio. Now suppose RBI says that the loan to value ratio is 90%, right? So this means if you are depositing gold jewelry worth rupees 1 lakh, and then the banks will only give you loans worth rupees 90,000, which means you are not eligible to get the entire worth of your gold back as form of loans. So this is called loan to value ratio. And why is there a loan to value ratio? Because if you have deposited 1 lakh rupees worth of gold, and if the value of gold continues to stay at 1 lakh, why will you return the 1 lakh loan back, right? Thinking that banks to bechi dega gold and take your money back, right? So this doesn't happen. So that is why highlighting the loan to value ratio, and actually banks, whether or not they are adhering to these kind of regulations, there is a weak monitoring by RBI. Similarly, incorrect applications of risk weights. Now suppose if I am a laborer and if I deposit some of my gold in the banks and take loans against them, so naturally my ability to repay back the money because I am a laborer would be quite not good, right? But what if I am a salaried employee and if I deposit the gold with banks, so naturally my repayment ability would be higher than a laborer. So this is how banks assign risk weights to different kinds of categories. Now whenever there is an incorrect application, so suppose if I am a laborer and bank highlights, no, this person has a very good ability to return back the loans. So this is how incorrect applications might also affect the loans. Also, there is a lack of transparency in gold auction. So whenever you do not return the loan, as banks have your gold as collateral, they can sell off these gold in the market and recover the money. So whenever these auctions are not transparent, how will you understand that banks are actually getting the entire worth value of money, right? And also valuation is done sometimes without customer presence, that might actually lead to lower valuation of the gold. So these are the deficiencies that have been flagged by the government in the review. Now, what are the RBI's draft guidelines in this regard? First of all, RBI has banned on lending against financial assets. Suppose gold and silver ETFs, mutual fund loans, against these you can't borrow the money from the banks as against physical gold. You can only borrow money from the banks against gold loan when you have deposited a physical gold with the banks as a collateral. Similarly, the RBI has capped the amount of loan that you can get against your collateral by capping the value of loan to value ratio. That is maximum of 75% only the banks will give you for your gold loan. So suppose if you are depositing 1 lakh rupees worth of gold in the banks, then banks will only extend you loans worth rupees 75,000 at maximum. Similarly, the purpose for which you are taking the loan might be different. So suppose if you are taking the loan for purposes of income generating purposes, you can't use that loan for consumption purposes, right? So suppose if you are taking the loan to start a new business, but you can't use that loan to buy new clothes or go on a Europe trip. Similarly, collateral verification will be done, that lenders must ensure a clear ownership record and maintain verification proof, and loan tenure also. That means bullet repayment loans will be paid at least, and these will be capped at least 12 months. Now, what is bullet repayment loans? Now, suppose if you have taken a loan of 1 lakh rupees. So, what if you do not return the 1 lakh rupees immediately? So, you also have an option to pay EMI, right? So, you can deposit or return back the loan amount of money in installments. So this is an EMI. But if you return the interest payments along with the loan just at once without going for regular payments, these are called as bullet repayments. Hope I've made it clear what is the difference between EMIs and bullet repayments. EMIs regularly paying a part of your loan periodically so that the financial burden on you is not much, and bullet repayment is paying the entire interest and principal amount at once, and this has been capped at 12 months. Any doubt? Now, let's see if you are able to solve this question with reference to NPAs. Consider the following statements. Well, an asset is classified as an NPA if the principal or interest remains overdue for a period of 60 days. This is incorrect. I have told you this is the period of 90 days. Net NPA is calculated by deducting the loss assets from gross NPA. Well, this is incorrect. Why? Because the entire amount of money that is not returned back to the bank, you know, that is called as NPA. So naturally, this is called as gross NPA. Now, what is net NPA, right? Now, whenever banks extend you the loans, right? So they keep some amount money aside so that in case those loans not return back, it won't lead to problems of liquidity with the bank. And that keeping aside of some amount of money by extending loans to you, that is known as provisioning requirement, right? So suppose if you do not return back the money, banks can use this provisioning amount of money to extend further loans, and it will not lead to liquidity crisis. So when you reduce the amount of provisioning from gross NPA, you get net NPA. So gross NPA minus provisioning funds, you get net NPA, right? So this is the definition of net NPA. Please remember this. So therefore, second statement also incorrect, first statement also incorrect. Option D is the right answer. Now let us move to another article. This article appeared in the Indian Express and it talks about atmospheric river. What is atmospheric river? Let us understand. Now, why this atmospheric river is in news? Because a large part of United States witnessed heavy rainfall, strong winds and severe thunderstorms due to a type of storm known as atmospheric river. So what is indeed atmospheric river? Let us quickly understand this. Now, atmospheric rivers are indeed long narrow band of moisture that travel in the atmosphere, and this long narrow band of moisture, it transports large amount of water vapor from tropics, that is from water bodies. It transfers a large amount of water vapor into land, and naturally when such huge amount of water vapor travels towards land, when it gets elevated, it will lead to high amount of rainfall. So when atmospheric rivers, they pass over land, they can cause conditions which are very similar to hurricanes and cyclones, like intense and rapid rainfall, cyclone force winds, and significantly it increases the height of waves also. And this problem has actually happened in US right now, because as you can see, this is an image of how the atmospheric river happens. Water vapor which originates from water bodies like Pacific Ocean, it takes huge amount of water vapor in towards land, and when it gets elevated due to the presence of mountains, it leads to heavy rainfall here, and at higher altitudes it might also lead to snowfall. Right, so this is a pictorial representation of how atmospheric river works. Now these are also called as rivers in the sky, and one of the most well-known atmospheric rivers that happens in the coast of US, that is known as Pineapple Express. It is the moisture or atmospheric river that transport moisture from tropical Pacific Ocean around Hawaii to US and Canada. And for a true Pineapple Express to happen, the location becomes very important, because the tail end of that atmospheric river, that is moisture, should be pulled into the atmosphere, and this must start near Hawaii, and then this river must stretch continuously throughout the atmosphere to the US western coast. So this is called as Pineapple Express. Understand? So Pineapple Express is what? It is a kind of atmospheric river. Now these atmospheric river, technically they can happen anywhere in the world, but the most atmospheric or the most dominant ones are the ones that happen on the west coast of Northern America, which takes up moisture from the Pacific Ocean. And these atmospheric rivers, these are responsible for between 30 to 50% of annual precipitation in the western coast of United States, just because of few atmospheric rivers. And they can also occur elsewhere, like eastern coast of United States, when they often channel the moisture from Caribbean waters, right? Now the consequences of atmospheric river. Now it has both positive and negative consequences. First, positive is that it brings much desired rainfall to coastal areas, which can beneficial for the economic activities like agriculture, like transportation, like fishing, like water supplies. However, if it leads to higher intensity of rainfall, these atmospheric rivers can lead to torrential rainfalls, occurrences of flash floods, landslides at higher altitudes, huge amount of snowfall, as well as sheet erosion and strong river windstorms, right? So this is both the positive and negative consequences of atmospheric river. Now if you have understood atmospheric river, but before that, let us understand also one impact of a phenomenon known as climate change, because you understand climate change is a reality right now, and climate change affects all the weather patterns, including atmospheric river. Now, a study conducted by NASA have actually predicted that atmospheric river going forward, due to climate change, it will become more intense, it will become longer, and it will become wider, which means it will carry huge amount of water vapors, which can lead to significant rise in rainfall levels, right? And this is due to rising temperatures globally. Now, by the end of 21st century, atmospheric rivers could become 50 to 290% more frequent in the regions like Greenland, like Western Northern America, East Asia, Western Europe, and Antarctica. So this is actually a bad news, because it might lead to huge amount of rainfall, it can lead to increased amount of floods and other weather related problems, right? Now let's see if you are able to solve this particular question. Pineapple Express, sometimes in the news, is related to what? Sarang, Baga, Soma, all of you are right. Option D is the correct answer. Now let's move to another article of the day. This I've taken from the Indian Express, yesterday's Indian Express, and as you can see from the image, it talks about people dancing in the state of Assam in the Bihu festival. So what is Bihu? Let us try to understand this. Now the context of this article is that a classic Satriya dance was performed during Rongali Bihu. Rongali Bihu, also known as Bohag Bihu, is the first day of Hindu solar calendar, and it is celebrated in the state of Assam, and it also highlights the start of Assamese New Year. In addition to that, it also highlights the beginning of harvesting season, so it is also important from societal perspective and also from economic perspective. Now, let's talk about few details about Bihu. Now, Bihu is a traditional folk dance of state of Assam, which is performed by both men and women. Now it is performed during Rongali Bihu festival, also known as Bohag Bihu, which is again the start of Assamese New Year. Now Bihu festivals, generally they are celebrated 3 times a year, that is Bohag Bihu in spring, Magh Bihu in winter, and Kongali Bihu in autumn. Now currently Bihu, they are not a part of UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage. So people of Assam, they are actually demanding that Bihu should be included in the UN Intangible Cultural Heritage list, sorry, UNESCO's list, right? So what you have to remember is that it is not a part of the UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage. Now let us also talk about a classical dance which was mentioned in the context, that is Satriya dance. Now Satriya dance originated in Satra monastery, which was a part of New Vaishnavite movement led by Srimant Shankar Dev in the state of Assam back in 15th century. Now Satriya was given the status of a cultural or a classical dance in the year 2000 by the Sangeet Natak Academy. India also has other dances which are classified as classical dances. These include Bharatnatyam of Tamil Nadu, Kathakali of Kerala, Kuchipudi of Andhra Pradesh, Kathak of North India, Mohiniyattam of Kerala, Manipuri of Manipur, as well as Odishi, which is related to Odisha. Now, few facts about Satriya dance. It is a dance which is based on mythological themes and it differs from other dance in forms of basic dance. They have special mnemonic bolts known as Borgeet, and musical instruments are also played during this dance event, which also leads to people wearing colorful costumes and having or doing complicated choreographic patterns, which is related to the instruments that are playing around. Now, different types of Satriya dance are also performed. One is called as Ankiya Bhavana. This is a one stage act when only one person dramatizes the event, and if people are performing in the group, this is called as Ojapali dances, right? Now, how are Bihu and Satriya related? Now, Satriya is a classical dance form of Assam, and it incorporates elements from various different folk dances that prevail in Assam, which includes Bihu and also other dances like Ojapali, Devdasi, Bihu, Bodos, right? So Satriya's hand gestures, rhythmic syllables and footwork, they show very similarities to Bihu. That is why these both are closely related. Understand? Any doubt up till now? Now, these are other important folk dances that are prevailing in India. So, please take a screenshot, note that down. This can be asked in the UPSC. So, I've jotted down everything in one slide to make things easier for you. Now, I've curated another question which is very similar to the PYQ that appeared in 2018. You have to categorize these dance with respect to states. Now you have to tell which of the pairs given above is or are correct. So this is your homework. The last article we are not going to cover today. We are going to cover that tomorrow because time has come for me to end this session. Okay. So this is all from my side for today. Please stay tuned to our discussion. Tomorrow I will cover the left out article, that is the Indian Middle Eastern Europe Economic Corridor, okay, and rest of the articles that appear in tomorrow's newspaper. So this is all from my side. I will take your permission and please have a very pleasant evening and a very good night.